Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer and I am just over 28 weeks pregnant with our first child. If you couldn't already tell by the title, our son Milo was diagnosed with Heterotaxy Syndrome, and I will talk about what that is and how we found out and what we know so far in just a little bit. But I wanted to come on here and film this video, and I would like to make it a series of videos just for a few reasons. One, I would like for it to be an outlet for myself, but two, I'm hoping to build a community and bring awareness to heterotaxy and what this rare condition is. And today is May 19th, 2021. So if you're watching this a few days from now or a few years from now, if you are going through the same situation, I'm hoping that this is going to bring you some insight and just to know that you're not alone. I'm also hoping that this will be a good outlet for me to share and to share Milo's updates with friends and family who want to stay up to date with what's going on, because it really is not plain and simple and like, hey, how's it going, and just a few sentences you could explain what's happening, because that's really not the case with heterotaxy. So I will say that we as my husband and I we've never heard the term heterotaxy as of 2 weeks ago when they told us what it was. We're still learning and educating ourselves on what it is and learning the medical terminology, but I'm definitely not very great at anatomy or the human heart. So if I butcher some of these terms, like, just know that I'm trying. And I'm sure that as time goes on, I will definitely be learning more because I have to at this point. I have to educate myself on the heart and on Milo's condition so that I can make the best educated decisions as we go along. So let's talk about what heterotaxy syndrome is. I have a printout here that the doctor gave me, and it's several pages long, but I'm only going to read like a snippet of it just so you have an idea of what it is. But I will find this exact link and link it down below in case you are interested. So heterotaxy syndrome is a condition in which the internal organs are abnormally arranged in the chest and abdomen. The term heterotaxy is from the Greek words heteros, meaning other than, and taxis, meaning arrangement. Individuals with this condition have complex birth defects affecting the heart, lungs, liver, spleen, intestines, and other organs. So essentially, every individual with heterotaxy is very unique. There are certain organs that are impacted on some individuals and not others, but the majority of the issues are with the heart. From what I was told, it's very uncommon to not have any heart defects, and if your child has been diagnosed with heterotaxy and they do not have heart defects, I am so happy for you. Unfortunately, a lot of children with heterotaxy or individuals with heterotaxy have congenital heart defects, and that's the case with Milo as well. So let's talk about how we found out, because I feel like it's kind of been a journey to even get to this point. But from what I've been hearing, heterotaxy a lot of times is diagnosed at a pregnancy anatomy scan. Usually around 20 weeks, women go in for their anatomy scan, and that is where usually they will determine that something is wrong. Maybe they will tell you then and there what they think it is, or they'll refer you to a maternal fetal specialist and kind of go from there. So that's kind of what happened with us. So I went in for my anatomy scan around 20 weeks, and this was in Colorado. We're now located in Arizona, but back in Colorado we had our anatomy scan, and they maybe a week later they called me and they said, we don't see everything that we need to see. Don't be concerned. Usually it's just the way the baby's positioned. We just need to see you back. And at that time I was a little concerned, but after speaking to a few people, a lot of people were like, oh no, it's just very normal for them to not have found everything that they needed to find because of the way the baby's positioned, and they just need you to go back and kind of do another anatomy scan. So a few weeks later, we went back for the other anatomy scan, and at that point, the tech, I remember her looking confused and not wanting to really share that. I know that they can't really tell you much, but I remember the look on her face of confusion, and I just really hoped that she was just not very experienced and that she was wrong about something. I wasn't extremely concerned, but I was a little worried at that point. And then a week later, we had our OB appointment. And I remember it was my last OB appointment before moving. It was literally like 2 days before we moved. I had my last OB appointment before my new OB over here in Arizona. So I went to the appointment, still not thinking much. I just brought up the fact like, hey, we haven't heard back from the anatomy scan. And she was like, okay, let me go. She stepped out of the room. She's like, let me go to the radiology department and get the findings, and I'll be right back. Okay, no big deal. She came back and she started reading some of the things that they listed, I guess, on the findings. And this is where we got a little bit more concerned. But again, they weren't very specific. And she said, I know that it's not easy to not worry about this, but I wouldn't worry about this until you go see a maternal fetal specialist, because they're the ones that would know a lot more. But from what the findings, and I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what the findings were. I just remember they worded it to where it sounded like they just couldn't see certain things because of the positioning of the baby. So one of the things was that they couldn't see, I think it was like the left ventricle of his heart. And again, they made it seem like it was the way that he was positioned. But then it also said that his stomach appeared to be a little bit more midline. I believe the stomach's supposed to be on your right, and it was a little bit more midline, but it was hard to tell. So everything was still very like cloudy at this point, but we were a bit worried now at this point, because we're like, okay, it's been twice now that they've said that they can't find or locate something due to the baby's position. So I feel like the second time around, the baby was positioned a lot differently, so they should have been able to find what they were looking for. So then we moved, because we were moving 2 days after that, and there was no way I was going to go to see a maternal fetal specialist on time before moving. So it took us a few weeks to actually go see a specialist, and that's because my husband's in the military, and basically when you move, you need to find a new primary care manager, so a new doctor, a new PCM. Once you see them, then they refer you to OBGYN. Then you have to make an appointment with OBGYN, and then they refer you to the maternal fetal specialist. You have to make an appointment to see them. So it was a process, and it was very stressful to wait and not knowing if something was potentially wrong with Milo. Finally, we went to go see the specialist. This was probably just over maybe a week and a half ago. We went to go see the specialist, and we went in for the anatomy scan, and toward the end of the scan, we noticed that the tech was kind of avoiding the heart area a little bit. Everything else seemed to be looking pretty good, and she made good conversation. She was very nice, but you could just tell that there was something wrong. And when she said, let me step out and grab the doctor, that's when we knew there was something wrong, and we were just hoping that it wasn't something horrible. So the doctor came in, and he was looking at the ultrasound with her, and he just turned to us and said, you know, this is a very complex situation. We're gonna have to go to my office. And so once he said that, I knew that there was something definitely wrong. So we go to his office, and he wasn't in there yet, but we sat in there for a few minutes before he walked in, and he brought in like a mold of a heart, and he pretty much just asked, like, what do you know so far? And we're like, nothing really. They haven't really told us anything other than they couldn't figure everything out. And he just seemed kind of like shocked and upset that nobody had told us, because at this point I was already like 26 weeks or so. And so he had to give us the news that Milo had Heterotaxy Syndrome, and he had, I guess, spoken to somebody else first to make sure that that's what it was before coming in to tell us. And we didn't know what that was. He gave us a printout and he pretty much tried to explain what it was. And that's kind of where we just lost it. And I remember him explaining like what it was. But I really wasn't paying much attention because I was just in shock still. So he was very nice about it, and he said, I will see you guys in a week because I'm sure you guys will have a lot of questions. So, but he told us that he really wanted us to see a pediatric cardiovascular specialist immediately. So he made a few phone calls and he was able to get us seen at a nearby clinic. And this other doctor, cardiovascular specialist, he was so kind to see us during his lunch, because that's how important that this was and how bad they wanted us to be seen, which we were really, really thankful for. So we went to the heart specialist and they did another ultrasound. They did a fetal echo of his heart, and that took about another hour. And again, after the ultrasound, we went into this other doctor's office, and he just tried to explain to us that he basically tried to explain the anatomy of the heart and what he saw so far. And I say so far because heterotaxy is one of those things that I've now learned. You don't just know all the answers. It's like a puzzle you have to piece together as time goes on, and you just have to kind of make your way day by day and find out more and learn more and kind of take it one step at a time. So once we left there, we were more confused, I think. And so that's when we got home and started trying to educate ourselves and learn more about the situation. We were just so confused. We didn't even know, like, is this, I remember asking, is this fatal? Can he potentially live a long life? I mean, all these questions. Your world goes from, this is a lot harder than I thought, but your world goes from thinking that you have a healthy baby to suddenly they have all these congenital heart defects and they can die. And so it's just really hard to process. And I remember that day was one of the hardest days for us. And that whole weekend, because it happened on a Friday, and I feel like it took us a few days to like adjust a little bit and try to kind of like calm down. So about a week later, after we received his diagnosis, we went back to the maternal fetal specialist, and He just wanted to know if we had any questions, which of course we had a lot of questions. And one of my main questions was what's the plan going forward? Like, what does this look like for us? And of course, every situation is different and things can change in an instant. But as of now, the plan was to be seen regularly by all three, my OB, my maternal fetal specialist, and the cardiovascular specialist. Because of the situation, I'm now high risk and they want to closely monitor Milo. So the plan is pretty much to figure out as much as they can before his birth, because they want to be as prepared as possible to tackle whatever comes their way. And the main thing is his heart. Is he going to be able to breathe right when he gets out? What are the complications going to be? Of course, nobody could plan exactly what's going to happen, but they can tell with the heart where things are positioned, what kind of problems he can have, if he will need emergency surgery right after, or if he'll be able to go to the NICU to be tested first for things before having surgery. The main things to take away that I've kind of learned are he will definitely need open heart surgeries, multiple surgeries. Again, every baby's different, but for my baby, he will need multiple, at least 3 or more open heart surgeries. There is, from what I've learned, and again, I don't know the proper terminology, but there's a left and a right-sided heterotaxy syndrome, I guess. He has the right-sided one, which usually means that there's going to be no spleen, but we're still hoping that he has one, which they will not be able to figure out really until after he's born. Along with that, I had questions on like delivery. Is he going to be, do I need to be induced early? Do I need to have a C-section? Like how do things look? I assumed that I would need a C-section because I just figured if I have him vaginally, it will put him in distress, because that's kind of a lot for them to handle like during delivery. But actually it's preferred to have the baby vaginally because they kind of get a head start, their lungs get a head start, and they actually prefer vaginal delivery versus C-section. So that was a relief. I'm really hoping that I could have him vaginally and I don't have to have a C-section. So the goal as of now is to have him vaginally. And then also they said, no, we actually don't want him born too soon. We want him to get as full term as possible. We want him to be really strong. We need his lungs to be really strong. We need his brain to be strong. We need, basically we need him as strong as possible so that he can tackle whatever he needs to tackle, whatever comes his way. However, I am an hour and a half away from the hospital, so they, as of now, they're thinking that potentially being induced maybe a week to 2 weeks early. That's still up in the air. I have to talk to the OB next week and discuss exactly what's going to happen. But as of now, those are all things that I've learned, questions that have been answered for me. Also, I asked about, and again, and you'll hear me kind of repeat myself, things could change in an instant, but as of now, I had asked, once he is born, assuming he's born vaginally and everything, and he comes out looking fine, crying and everything like a normal, healthy baby. Normal is not the right word to use, a healthy baby. Are they going to whisk him away immediately to the NICU? Am I going to be able to hold him just for a little bit? They said that it's definitely not going to be a normal situation. It's not going to be like he's going to be born and then I'm going to have skin to skin and I'm going to be able to breastfeed him and he's going to be with me for a good hour or so before going to the NICU. But they said their hope is to at least allowed me to hold him for maybe a minute before they take him to the NICU. So that is very hopeful. I'm hoping for that. Again, things could go completely opposite and I could have an emergency C-section and he could have an emergency surgery after. It's so unknown. And I'll explain the emergency surgery in a bit, because I brought the paperwork that the cardiovascular specialist gave me. He drew 2 of them. We've seen him twice now. So the first time he drew us, it's just a piece of paper like this that he drew to try to explain to us, because a lot of times you don't know what any of this means unless you studied the heart and you're very familiar with what's going on with the anatomy. But this is the time that I'm going to get a little bit into like the medical terminology. So if you want to skip ahead, that's completely fine. This is more so for anybody who really wants to understand what Milo's situation is, what possibilities your child can have if they have heterotaxy. And again, these are just, some of them are known facts, like this is what they can see, and some of the things they're, what's the word he used? They suspect, they don't know for sure. It's hard to see everything. So this is what I understand so far, and I hope you could kind of see this picture. So the heart has 2 ventricles. Yes. So his, from my understanding, are actually flipped. So the right one is on the left side and the left side is on the right side. And the left one, which is actually on the right side in the picture, the left one is small. It didn't grow. It's supposed to be the same size as this side, but it's actually a lot smaller. So he had written on here that he had a small AV valve. He also has a small left-sided ventricle, and he has what's called TAPVR, which is one of the most crucial things that they were trying to figure out. And again, I won't go into too many details. I'll go ahead and link TAPVR down below, but it stands for transposition of the great arteries. And part of that has to do with the way the veins connect to the heart, and I'm still trying to learn it all, but the main thing was that he had one of his veins here. They didn't know where it was going. It was abnormally positioned, and they didn't know if it came back into the heart or not. And they said that if it was obstructed, that would mean he would need immediate surgery because of the obstruction. It would not be good. So when we went back yesterday, that was their main focus, was to determine if that was obstructed or not. And I'll share with you what we found out. But the last thing that he shared with us in the first visit was total anomalous pulmonary venous return. And again, I don't know too much. I'm still trying to learn what all this is, but I know that Milo has that. And again, I will link down below what that is. Also, I will note that TAPVR, he suspected that he had supracardiac type. I think there's 3 different types. With Milo's case, this was the vein that they couldn't figure out where it went. They didn't know if it was obstructed or what was going on, but essentially this is the TAPVR that I talked about, and there's a few different types, but sometimes this vein will run down this way, and from what I understood, that's the more complex one to have. And then sometimes it will run up this way and then come back in. But in his case, his kind of takes a sharp turn and comes back in this way. The good news is that it isn't obstructed, which means that he more than likely will not need immediate surgery right after birth, which is good, because anything that could give them a few more days or a few more weeks before any type of surgery allows them to become stronger and better chances to fight off any potential issues that could happen. So we did figure that out yesterday, which was good news. It looks like even though he has 2 ventricles, he is being treated as a single ventricle case because the small ventricle is not doing what it's supposed to do. There's really nothing happening. It's so small that the 4 veins that go back into the heart are all coming into this one ventricle. So it's good that all 4 veins are coming back into that one side, because from what he was explaining, sometimes only 2 come back and then the 2 other ones are going other places. And so it's good to hear that there are some positives to this. And because he was able to kind of see what he was mainly concerned about, he doesn't need to see us back in 2 weeks, which is really good. We have to go back in 6 weeks because he needs time to see how he's growing, because things can change. So we're hoping that things don't become obstructed. We're hoping that things continue to grow properly. But again, he needs time for Milo to grow. So we're going back in 6 weeks to figure out if things are still looking like they were looking yesterday. But in the meantime, we are seeing the maternal fetal specialist pretty often because he needs to make sure that Milo is still growing and developing as normal as possible, and just to make sure that there is no other curveballs thrown in there. So that is currently what is happening. So there are definitely, it was really hard news to take in, and it's still pretty difficult, but there are some positives to his defects, and we're hoping that he won't need emergency C-section afterward. And we are hoping that when he does need his first surgery, that hopefully he will be a little bit older, maybe even 2 months. We're not sure yet. I will note that he had mentioned, when I say he, the cardiovascular specialist had mentioned that there was a lot of blood flow, which is good. Sometimes you don't have any flow. So Milo has a good blood flow when it comes to the, what is this called? Honestly, I'm not 100% sure, to be quite honest. Again, I'm still trying to educate myself, but there is a lot of flow coming through this area, which I guess gets returned back in through here. So he said that if there's too much flow, they could potentially need to put like a band right here to kind of close this up just a little bit so that the flow is a little bit less. Otherwise, Milo can begin breathing kind of fast, and you can kind of see his like ribs come up, they said. So that would require an open heart surgery, apart from like the other open heart surgeries that he will need. And while they're doing that, they would probably try to fix this so that it doesn't curve this much, but that can become a little bit more complicated. So even if he needs the surgery for the flow situation, usually that won't be like an emergency situation. He said it would be maybe a few days later, could potentially even give us some time to transport Milo to like a children's medical center up in Phoenix. So I don't think I mentioned that we are having the labor and delivery in Tucson at Banner, and then hopefully he's stable enough to be transported for his actual surgeries up in the Phoenix Children's Hospital. So that is currently the hope, that things go smoothly. I have a few notes and I just kind of wanted to quickly look through them to make sure I didn't miss anything. So another thing I wanted to quickly touch base on is the financial aspect slash insurance and support groups, things of that nature. And I don't want to take too much time here because I know that everybody has different insurances, they live in different places, but I'm quickly going to share what I've found out so far and maybe it'll be beneficial to you. I will say that we have TRICARE, we're in the military, and so we do have TRICARE. And what I've found out so far is, first, I think this is with any insurance, you could get a case manager. So once Milo was born, I could get a case manager for him. And what the case manager does, from my understanding, is they help you figure out all the finances, what's going to be covered, what's not going to be covered. So that way you're not surprised with bills, medical bills. And they could guide you in all sorts of directions. So as of now, once Milo was born, I could get a case manager for him. In the meantime, I can get a case manager for myself for the pregnancy so that I can make sure I know what's going to be covered when it comes to delivery and all of that. So I'm currently in the process of looking into that. But if you haven't already and you're in the same situation, call your insurance company and see if you can get a case manager. And that's, from my understanding, not just with TRICARE, that's with insurance in general. So I recommend looking into that. But when it comes to TRICARE, or it comes to military, there are two programs that I heard about. One is called EFMP, and I will link that down below. And the other one is called ECHO. And again, I don't know too much about these programs. All I know so far is that they could potentially help cover costs that the TRICARE might not cover. And also it can protect you from having to be relocated or move to an area that doesn't have the specialist that you need for your child, which is very important. So as soon as Milo is born, we have to put him into the DEERS system so that he is officially in the system, and then we could apply for these programs. That's at least what they told my husband. So if you do have TRICARE, make sure to look into those two programs, and I will link it down below. Apart from that, I was recommended once Milo was born to look into Medicaid and the SSI, the Social Security. They could potentially help. And then also some states have a parent caregiver program. Not all states, but potentially you could get paid for taking care of your child if you're unable to work because you're taking care of them constantly. You always have to go to appointments, you have to be at the NICU, you have to be there for their surgeries, things like that. You could potentially receive financial assistance in some states for, if they have a program like that. So again, I haven't looked into all of this because it is very overwhelming, and it's only been just under 2 weeks that we figured all of this out. But these are things that have just been recommended to me that I've written down that I can begin to look into as time kind of progresses. And I think it's a good thing that I'm doing this now, because the last thing that you want to do is try to figure out finances and all of this other complicated stuff once the baby is born and you're having to be there at the NICU, you're having to be there for surgeries, you're not in the right mindset. So I'm just trying to prepare as much as I can for the unknown, essentially. So other than that, I guess the only other thing I kind of want to touch base on is like mentally what I've been going through, what my husband's been going through, because this is obviously a huge change from thinking you have a healthy baby to thinking the worst case scenario. And that has been the hardest for me, but it's honestly gotten a lot better just within this week and a half. Like I mentioned earlier, the first few days were the toughest. I honestly didn't know if I wanted to have a baby shower anymore. I didn't know if we should put the stroller together, if we should put the bassinet together. I was thinking worst case scenario, something happens to him and he doesn't get to come home, and now I have to deal with coming back to all of his things. And that was really hard for me to mentally process. And my husband and I decided that we are not going to be defeated. We are going to tackle this and think positively and build his stroller and build the bassinet and wash his clothes and mentally allow ourselves to think that everything is going to be okay. And that has really helped our mindset. We are excited again about having a baby shower. We're having it in just under 4 weeks. I finally, well, we just moved here a few weeks ago, so I finally unpacked his boxes of things that we have for him, clothes and books and just, you know, things that we have collected over the few months since I found out I was pregnant, and kind of laid out his clothes and allowed myself to be excited again, and just trying to be in that good mental headspace as much as possible, because I feel like he deserves us to fight just as hard as he's gonna fight. And so if you are just finding this out, if you're struggling through this, just try to remind yourself that they need you. Your child needs you to be strong. And there are going to be days that are hard. But if you allow yourself to think very negatively, then I personally feel like it could impact you in a way that is not helpful. So just allowing myself to be happy and to be excited about everything still. And I think that's what has helped us the most, is just being excited, being optimistic, being hopeful, and just praying for the best outcome possible. And I think that he deserves that. And I am really excited to meet him and learn his personality. And I know that he's a little fighter, so we are really excited. And I am one of those people that believes things happen for a reason, and I am not entirely sure why this happened to us, but I try to look at the positives. I try to figure out why things happen for a reason, and all I could really think of is you know, there's people out there who are a lot younger, who don't have the financial means, who don't have support systems, don't have partners. There's so many reasons, and they might have decided to terminate pregnancy. They might not have what they need. And I feel like we are a little bit older. We're in our early 30s. And we are fortunate to have the financial means. We are near some family members that are willing to help us if we need the help. And we have the military who has been providing us with good insurance. And I'm just trying to stay positive and focus on the positive that come our way. Also, I have the best husband ever. He is literally my best friend, and I don't even know how I would be able to do this without him. We know that we are going to be the best team that we can be for Milo, and we are excited to meet him, and we're just hoping for the best. This has definitely been a lot harder to film than I thought, but that's okay. I would rather be honest and real and document what I'm feeling at the moment. So I will go ahead and also link down below a heterotaxy support group that I found on Facebook. I feel like that has provided me a lot of hope, a lot of resources. They answer a lot of great questions. I also put together an Instagram for Milo's journey that I will also link down below if you want to follow that. I hope you subscribe to this channel, stay up to date. The next appointment for the cardiovascular specialist will be July 1st, I believe. So I will go ahead and film another update at that time. We're just hoping that things continue to stay where they're at right now and that things don't worsen with his heart. Again, I will keep you up to date with whatever future findings we have. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye guys.